We have live animals out in the barn, right? They need to be fed, they need to be watered, they need to be cleaned up after, and they need to be milked every day, or they will die.
America's farmers stand at the edge of a storm they didn't create, but one that is now tearing through their lives. Entire shipments of almonds, dairy, soybeans, and corn that once moved effortlessly across the Pacific to China now sit idle in warehouses collecting dust. What used to be reliable income is now just piles of unsold harvests. And the message from Beijing could not be clearer. The trade war launched by Donald Trump is hitting the hardest where America is most vulnerable: its agricultural heartland. In Washington state, hay exporters are laying off workers because Chinese buyers have simply disappeared. These aren't just abstract statistics. They're families losing the stability they built over generations. They're farmers who did everything right, planted, harvested, prepared their crops, only to find no one waiting to buy them. China, once America's biggest buyer of farm goods, has slammed the door shut. Add unpredictable weather, rising costs, and loans that never go away, and the picture shifts from difficult to devastating. Every idle shipment means truck drivers aren't paid, food processing plants fall silent, banks stop lending, and rural towns slowly unravel. Just months earlier, the system was functioning, not perfectly, but predictably. Farmers had a dependable customer. Then came the tariffs. In April of 2025, Trump raised tariffs on Chinese imports to as high as 145%, calling it a defense against unfair trade. China's response was immediate: retaliatory tariffs aimed squarely at American farm products, targeting Trump's own political base. Within 6 weeks, exports to China were slashed in half. Not just a dip, but billions of dollars in food left with no destination. In California's Central Valley, almonds piled high in storage after Chinese contracts vanished. At the port of Oakland, exports of almonds and dairy dropped more than 40%. The brutal reality is no other buyer comes close to filling the gap. Europe is already overflowing with its own supplies. Southeast Asia takes some, but only a fraction. Milk can't sit forever. Soybeans spoil, silos burst with unsold corn. Farmers already drowning in debt are watching losses mount. From California to Iowa, every unsold truckload pushes another community closer to collapse. This is why farmers across the Midwest have begun pleading publicly: make a deal, any deal, just to reopen the Chinese market. It's no longer about politics or national pride. It's about survival. And this crisis is not born of weather, pests, or a poor season. Its roots stretch directly to Washington, D.C. and Trump's sweeping tariff war. Economists predicted it. If America struck, China would strike back. But Beijing didn't just retaliate, it built a new system. Instead of waiting out the storm, China pivoted fast, redirecting trade lines that had long centered on American farms. When the U.S. stopped being a supplier, Brazil and Argentina stepped in. Within months, their ships were filling Chinese ports with soybeans and corn. Australia expanded beef and dairy exports. China wasn't just reacting, it was restructuring global food supply. For Washington, this meant more than missed sales. Farmers who spent decades forging relationships in China watched them vanish overnight. For Beijing, it was a chance to bind itself closer to South America, strengthen BRICS, and present itself as the dependable partner America could no longer claim to be. The balance of power in trade is simple. The buyer decides who thrives. By buying South American crops, China is signaling that American farmers are no longer essential. What's happening is not a temporary slump. It's a structural realignment of global agriculture. Take soybeans. China consumes over 60% of the world's soybeans. For years, it leaned on American farmers. But by 2023, Brazil had shipped over 54 million metric tons to China, nearly 3/4 of all Chinese imports. By mid-2025, that number surged toward 90%. American soy shipments are now nearly non-existent. Prices back home are crashing. Silos overflow. The same trend hits beef, corn, dairy, and poultry. Argentina and Uruguay expanded beef exports. Brazil is now China's leading supplier of both soy and corn after Beijing approved imports in 2022. And China didn't stop at buying crops. It poured billions into South America, modernizing railroads, expanding ports, building cold storage, and financing it all with loans and joint ventures. This wasn't patchwork. It was a deliberate strategy to ensure American farmers could be cut out permanently. Every ship leaving Brazilian ports doesn't just carry soybeans, it carries proof that the U.S. has been replaced. But food is only part of the picture. China also became the top foreign investor in Latin American oil. In Chile and Peru, Chinese companies control vast copper mines, feeding its factories and renewable industries. Through its Belt and Road Initiative, China now bankrolls highways, power grids, and railroads across the continent. And politically, this ties into BRICS. Brazil pushes for expansion, Argentina applies to join, and others like Venezuela and Bolivia align openly with Beijing's multipolar vision. For South America, China isn't just a buyer, it's a financier, a partner, and a path around U.S. influence. By 2022, China had already surpassed America as South America's biggest trading partner, with over $500 billion in trade, a number still rising. This isn't just about crops. It's about 5G technology, military exchanges, and strategic alliances. For American farmers, every empty silo is also a symbol of a shrinking nation's influence. The balance of power in the Western Hemisphere is shifting, and every year Washington clings to tariffs, it loses not only markets, but also trust, partnerships, and strategic ground. Back home, the pain is not just financial, it's generational. For every farm foreclosure in Iowa, every family in Washington state watching contracts disappear, there's the realization that this crisis is not a passing storm. Once markets are gone, they rarely return. Farmers are told to endure, to act as soldiers in an economic war. But what they see are bills stacking up, communities fading, and family land at risk of being lost forever. Meanwhile, banks that once sustained farms are pulling back. Credit is drying up. Lenders see the same numbers. Without exports, farms cannot repay. That means fewer loans for seeds, equipment, or land. Farmers can't plant, can't sell, and can't sustain. It's a vicious cycle, and small family farms fall first. The administration paints it as sacrifice for long-term victory, but victories never come. Relief checks barely touch the surface. They're bandages on wounds that keep bleeding. The truth on the ground is harsh. Debt rising, communities hollowing out, and no sign of recovery. And while exports collapse, another crisis rises at home: labor. Even for those who keep their land, there aren't enough workers to harvest crops. American farming has always relied on migrant labor. Workers from Mexico and Central America picking lettuce in California, tending dairy cows in Wisconsin, manning poultry plants in Arkansas. Without them, the system falters. Trump's immigration crackdown cut off that workforce at the very moment farmers needed help most. Tougher borders, fewer visas, fields went unpicked, vegetables spoiled, dairy barns went understaffed. Rather than offering relief, the administration doubled down, stripping away the very workers who kept the system alive. Farmers were left cornered. No markets abroad, no labor at home, and no support from Washington. This perfect storm has nothing to do with weather. It is politics that threatens to bankrupt America's agricultural backbone. And if nothing changes, this won't be remembered as a natural tragedy. It will be remembered as a self-inflicted wound. Across the Midwest, anger is growing. Farmers who once cheered Trump now watch their livelihoods vanish. China knows this. Its strategy is deliberate. By squeezing America's farm belt, it pressures Trump's strongest supporters. Every lost contract isn't just an economic blow, it's a political one. And even if Washington wanted to return to the old system, the question remains: why would China go back? If Brazil is now its trusted soybean supplier, what incentive exists to reopen the American door? If Europe supplies dairy, why risk an unstable partner? These are decade-long contracts. Every month the trade war drags on, the door closes further. The truth is brutal. This is about more than one season's harvest. It is about industries being erased for a generation. America's farmers are now trapped between collapsing exports, shrinking credit, and a gutted labor force. Operations that survived droughts, floods, and price swings are facing their deadliest challenge yet. Not from nature, but from political decisions. This is the current state of America's agricultural heartland. A slow collapse unfolding in real time. For the farmers who endure it, the future is uncertain, but one thing is clear. The damage is already reshaping the global order. And as this story continues, the question for Washington is simple. Will it admit it has already lost? Or will it double down and risk losing not just farms, but entire industries, entire regions, and its standing on the global stage? For more updates and deeper analysis of how this crisis unfolds, make sure to subscribe, because the story of American farming and its fight for survival is far from finished.